This lecture is near and dear to me because it's original. You can't find it in a standard marketing class. But I think it covers a very important topic, and that's how do customers think? What you're trying to do is influence their decision making. So how can you do that unless you understand how do they think? And so the next thing we're going to talk about is customer need and also company skills. The basic concept behind this is that people think randomly. We know that. But people are also systematic, meaning we all go through certain processes that are the same. And so by understanding those processes, we can make predictions on what people will do. And if we can make predictions, then we can tailor our promotion to convince people to do certain things. And so today what we'll talk about are what a customer needs are, which is based on Maslow, what they value, how they behave economically, and that's like given a certain situation, how will people respond? We'll talk about such topics as reference points and framing, and how do we go about laying bets? How does the magnitude of what we bet on affects things? And so behavioral economics is a field that's emerged over, I guess, the last 30 or 40 years. It's still a fairly young field. But the basic idea is that you can make predictions on what people should do, and yet they don't do it. And the reason why we have irrationalities is because people are limited. Our backgrounds shape how we go about doing things. And so, because of that, we make bad choices. However, if we can understand this, then we can influence others. The granddaddy of what drives people is Maslow. And Maslow came up with this hierarchy. A lot of people have come up with hierarchies, and in the end, they all just come back down to Maslow. And that's that we have physiological needs. You got to eat. We're concerned about safety, whether it's ADT, physical or malware bites. We all need love and belonging. You find that in places like church, or go online to a dating site. Esteem. Essentially, how does it make us feel? How do we honor or recognize things? And so driving around in a BMW gives you esteem. And self-actuation, you becoming the best you, that's what this class is about. And in your case, you're taking it online. And so everything leads back to Maslow. And because we know products can represent multiple values, they can pertain to either physiological and esteem or something like that. You can't have combinations. And your priorities could actually end up being societal. For example, if you're talking about one thing we take for granted in the United States is people in general don't have a lot of physiological needs because we have plenty of food and water and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, if you lived in like Sri Lanka or something like that, medical care, clean water, and things like that, you would value those things a lot more. We talked about what it is that customers value, and Richard Thaler is one of the founders of this area. And what he found out is that essentially figuring out how people make decisions is a very important thing to do. It's part of everything from war planning on down. Some models hold up well, some don't. The thing is, the variance that you see, this isn't like engineering where you're 99.9% predictable. On the other hand, if you can predict to 80% on something that's 50-50, that's a huge advantage. And what it comes down to, again, is that people may not be consistent, but they're systematic. The thing about people is there are certain biases we have, and those biases can be destructive. And those biases are, you assume that people are like you. If you have an opinion, you figure that everybody else is going to be like you. Or you're going to believe that your view of the world is superior to somebody else. Those are two big fallacies that bring about this. In terms of the way we make decisions, there are three types of people and three types of ways that we make decisions. One is being rational, and rational is about getting the highest return for what we do. On the other end of the spectrum is motivational, and that's that you're driven by your psychology, like if you're hedonistic or whatever your personality type. And bounded rationality is that you're going to follow certain patterns given a certain situation. Now, the most simplest is rationality, and this is the most common assumption. And what rationality is about is that you're going to make a decision based on maximizing your welfare. This is actually how Dr. Cho views the world. He basically says that the only thing you can really expect out of people is for them to do what's in their best interest. And that's rationality. On the other hand, that's a pretty dismal view of the world. But if you have that expectation, people will never actually disappoint you. And so economic theory is, will people always behave rationally? And Alan Greenspan, when the economy crashed in 2008, he was just shocked. He said he couldn't believe people could be so self-destructive. And all I can think is, Alan, what turnip truck did you fall off of? It's called greed, Alan. Newsflash, people can be greedy over rationality. We're not always rational. And an example of irrationality, and everyone is vulnerable to this. They took a poll of Stanford students and asked, they were asked to list what they thought people were going to die from. And so when they look at the causes, as they estimated that 73% of the people will die from natural causes, but the statistics actually say it's 92%. And then when you talk about, so that means I think 37% are going to die from unnatural causes. And so when they asked them about, okay, well, what are these unnatural causes? 53% thought it's, accident or homicides or something like that they're going to die from. When the reality is only 8% of the people die. And that's because we have fears. We have fears of unnatural events. This is why what happened on 9/11, as great as a tragedy as it was, people still live in fear of terrorists. The reality is, since 9/11, your odds of dying from furniture falling on you are greater than a terrorist attack on American soil. But we do have these irrationalities from fear. Another example of biases that we have is the game of ultimatum, and I'll talk about that in the next video.